Well, we'll go ahead and just kind of get started off with an intro here, and then we might have some more people joining as we get started here. But welcome to Agile Games Twin Cities. It's been a few months since we've had a meetup. Kind of took some time off for the summer, and definitely excited to have Cara here with us today to kind of liven things up a bit. Again, I don't if you found us via LinkedIn, Slack, however you found us, definitely happy to have you here. We do have a website, and I'll post it here in the chat in a little bit. This session will be recorded. And after every session, Chris, who is another one of the organizers of this meetup, he'll go through and do a little bit of editing on the video, and then we'll have that posted along with the recap of everything that we went through today. So you'll be able to go back and revisit if you needed to rehear some instructions or see how something was played. You'll definitely have that opportunity. So I will post that website here in just a moment. But today we are joined by Cara, and I'm super pumped to have Cara with us today. I saw Cara present at a virtual meetup event several months ago. I believe it was the Scrum Masters of the Universe meetup, and I thought her presentation was just really awesome, and it's the same one she'll be sharing here today. She's an amazing facilitator. She has several tips and tricks to help teams feel connected, keep engaged, and learn while having fun. Cara spent the past few years as a Scrum Master, and prior to that she was a teacher. She had some teaching experience in there too. So whether it's students that she's corralling or adults that she's corralling, she's really excellent at getting everybody together and navigating them through workshops or other activities. So she would be a stellar asset to any team. So you can connect with Cara on LinkedIn and continue talking with her or whatnot. I know it's early on a Thursday morning and you guys didn't come to hear me gab and talk and whatnot. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Cara and let's have some fun.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a super generous introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I've posted a link to the mural in the chat. My voice is kind of all over the place today. One of the joys of having a toddler is all of the bacterium that toddlers bring home from daycare. So I'm fighting a bit of a cold here in our house. But if you want to go ahead and jump into that mural, that's what we're going to be using as our base today. I'm also going to be sharing my screen, so if it's easier to just follow along with us, that works too. All right, thumbs up if you can see my screen. Perfect. All right, so if you have not used Mural before, I've got some tips and tricks right below the intro here at the start here section for zooming in, moving left, right, adding stickies. Out of curiosity, show me thumbs up, down, sideways. Have you used Mural or Miro before? Thumbs up is yes. Sideways is possibly, I can't remember, and thumbs down is no. Oh, perfect. All right. I'm going to jump us into our first activity, which is the waiting room. So it's this first big chunk here. You're going to add a picture of your favorite childhood movie or TV show. I've posted directions there as well. There's two ways that you can do it in Mural. The first one is to click the images icon on that black left-hand toolbar, search the show and add it. The second is our all-time standby. Go to Google Images, copy, paste. Land Before Time. Yes, a classic. Johnny Quest. All right. Power Rangers, can't go wrong. Puff and Stuff. I have never seen that one show up. That is amazing. Excellent, excellent. We weirdly started, my sister and I, in the middle of the Land Before Time series, and we just had an attachment to like the third movie. So anyone that had access to the full array when we were growing up, we were so insanely jealous. And then Dan, who's your favorite Power Ranger?
Oh my gosh, it's like asking favorite children. Well, I have the Green Ranger dagger behind me, so I'm gonna go with the Green Ranger.
Excellent, excellent.
Hmm.
I have to admit, Jeff, I don't know anything about Johnny Quest.
Yeah, that's a deep cut from the 80s, I think,
Right?
showing my age.
And Transformers the movie. Excellent. This is a great array. This is actually our first strategy of the day. It's waiting rooms. It gets teams familiar with the platform they're going to be using. It helps encourage on-time arrival, eliminate that awkward silence at the beginning, and can be team builder conversations. There's a variety of ways that you can use this strategy. So you can ask like a fluff question like this. You could ask you'd use that as a temperature check with your teams. So let's say you're working on something that's a bit of a difficult project, to be able to be like, hey, where are you, like pick a weather emoji that shows us where you're feeling today, right? Or maybe a project is dragging on, you can use that as a temperature check for that. I've got alternative ways that you can use the waiting room a little later in today's presentation, but it's a good way to kind of get everyone on board, make sure that everyone knows how to use the technology that the meeting is going to be focusing on. And then strategy 2 is Mural or Miro itself, which is not necessarily everyone's like immediate go-to, but our group here has a lot of experience with it, which is great. Visuals, research shows that visuals help increase retention. It's interactive, which we also know increases engagement. And then it lets your participants preview materials. There are some times where you want materials or information to be like a controlled release, which is why I have the squares that I delete out. That is another strategy in and of itself. But for some of your more reserved teammates, sometimes being able to see where the meeting is going and what types of questions they're going to be answering can eliminate a lot of those barriers to entry for them. It's also a great framework for you as the facilitator to kind of keep an eye on where you're going, how much you've got left. With like traditional PowerPoint slideshows, you get like a certain portion of the way through and you realize, oh, I think I still have a whole bunch of slides, versus that visual, it's all laid out. I'm going to back away from strategies for just a second and let you know a little bit about myself, a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. So I'm a Scrum Master, a former middle school teacher. I taught middle school for 14 years and a toddler mom, which I like to joke is the trifecta of you can't scare me. I am a cat mom as well, and you'll see Henry all over the room today. I'm a gamer, I love cooking, and I love crafting. So you really try and make sure that I'm bringing in different elements of that into when I'm hosting or facilitating as a Scrum Master. Today is more than just what are activities I can have my team do. What I really want you to be thinking about throughout today is what do I want engagement on my team to look like? Engagement isn't just clicking buttons, that's compliance. So the overarching theme is what is engagement and what is compliance? Compliance is they are doing the task that you've asked them. They're checking those boxes. You asked a question, they entered a response. You might be getting yes, no, instead of like a bigger idea. Engagement is something that is keying into their interests or their curiosity and getting them to produce meaningful engagement for you. I want to make sure that we hit home that these strategies are just a checklist. They're not just like, oh, I did that, we're good, my team will be engaged today. It's embedded practices that you put into your team that ask them to interact in some new ways. And then, of course, that the root of good engagement is relationships and trust. So the more you are consistent in applying these, the more you have set up a team environment where people feel like they can be honest, the more success you're going to see with some of these strategies. But overall, I want you to be asking, am I asking them to engage or am I asking them to comply? What do I want engagement to look like? With that in mind, I'm going to take us to our third strategy of the day, which is gamification, which sounds like it's right up this group's alley. So what I'm going to have you guys do is go to gimkit.com/join. Dan put in the comment, yes, it also really helps for neurodivergent folks and people who have accessibility needs to have all the information present on the screen. So you're going to go to gimkit.com/join. It's going to ask you for a code. I'm going to post it in just a second. Our code for today is 679903. That was a big sigh. Do you need help with anything? Is something tripping you up? No worries. Sometimes it's just that early morning reaction. For this game, I would recommend setting up a split screen so that you can see what I'm sharing on one side and then your gameplay screen on the other side of the screen. We're going to be playing a game called The Floor is Lava. Gimkit.com is an excellent website. It hosts over 13 or 14 different game types right now. It was actually created by two high school seniors who were tired of playing Kahoot in class. So they decided to make their own gaming platform and have their teachers test it out. Right now, it is a standard, tried and true in the education world, but there's also a lot of really great applications for it inside the world of Agile and Scrum. This game, like I said, is called The Floor is Lava, and the lava is going to be rising on my screen. You guys are going to be answering trivia questions. And then when you answer them correctly, it'll give you Gim coins that you can spend on materials to build your tower out of the lava. Let's see, what else should I tell you before I get started? Yes. We are going to use the topic of choice Disney princesses this morning, but as you're playing, I want you to think, what other ways could you see using this with your team? What are some other topics that you could see working with this platform? With that, I'm going to go ahead and start our game. I have sound turned off on my end because it comes out weird. But there is also music that periodically plays. All right. So on my screen, you can see your tower has given you a head start. The lava is the orange at the bottom, and now you answer your trivia questions to gain points to build your tower. Marissa has just constructed her first plank. Yes. Jeff, well done. Ooh, Dan put on a brick. Well done, well done. As you're playing, I'm going to give you some fairly meta instructions for how I do this with my own teams. You guys are playing pretty silently, which works. For some teammates, they are really struggling. So some people at this point are unmuting and they're like, I don't know these, which is a great time for me as the scrum master to be like, oh, what could we do if you don't know? Or be like, you guys can talk to each other and give prompting as far as working together. At the end, there's some really great conversations to be had around how might this show how we're siloing? How might this be reflective of how our team is communicating in general? Dan put up a staircase. I should have picked harder trivia. Oh, it's starting to catch up. That lava's starting to catch up. If you've got coins, I'd start spending them.
I don't know how to
I wonder
spend
how many of
coins.
us are rushing to answer as many questions as possible before spending your money.
I don't know how to spend coins.
Hit shop. And then
okay.
like after you answer a question, it'll say shop or continue. Go to shop.
Okay. And what do we want to spend it on?
Whatever
Bricks,
you can afford.
planks. Okay. Here's a brick then.
Ah,
Allison, well done. Give it a second. It's got a bit of a slow load. I have to say, this is the farthest I've ever had a team make it with the floor is lava. Well done. You broke the 4-minute record. Give yourself some applause.
we take our
So,
Disney series seriously.
right, you guys came to game. Like, let's do this. We use Disney Princess, and there's nothing wrong with using this as like an icebreaker with different factoids or trivia bits. But there are different ways that we can actually use this as a conversation around siloing, around how do we ask for help, around like Allison spoke up and she was like, I don't know how to do this. And Dan jumped right in, right? There's ways that you could expand this gameplay to a larger conversation. A lot of times teams start communicating right at the end when it's crunch time. Oh, does that sound familiar to anybody's team? That can be a conversation in and of itself. And then what I normally do at this point is I restart it. We do another gameplay and people talk the entire time. And they're asking, what princess has blonde hair and a purple dress? Or what, like they're asking each other these questions and they get further and further each time they play. So it can be an icebreaker just in general, but again, are we asking them to engage or comply? So they've just done the game, awesome, but now let's tie it into something that they can learn from that can help grow our team that next step. I'm actually going to bring us back to the mural board. And what I'd love for you to do is in those stickies below strategy 3, what could you use this strategy with your team? What purposes or topics could you see using as questions? With Gimkit, you can use preloaded, prefabbed ones, or you can create your own database of questions that are specific to your team.
This is Dan Vanderbilt. Is there a link to the mural board?
Yes. I've just posted it in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. These are excellent. So questions about team members themselves, right? Who has a pet iguana? That can be a question. It can be a get to know your team stuff. It can be your product operating model. It could be a product quiz, Scrum, let's see, the topic is just Scrum. Love it. I've seen this used as a Scrum guide quiz. So for like agile coaches in particular who are working with multiple Scrum Masters, to really use it as a review for those guys, to review working agreements, a team activity, a learning tool. Let's see. Questions about other teams and what they do. I've never seen that one, and I think it's excellent. Right? Speaking of breaking down silos and barriers between groups. Yeah. Getting to know yous. Excellent. So later on in the presentation, we're going to be using a strategy called menu board, and you'll be able to pick which types of strategies you want to explore to learn a little bit more about. Gimkit is one of those, and it highlights a whole bunch of the different games that Gimkit hosts. There are games where you pit player against player, team against team, full team. There's one where you can do the entire team against one person. There's a screen where you can you host, and it's a this or that. So half the screen is option A and half of it is option B, and they move their little character back and forth. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could use this outside of just the floor is lava, depending on, again, what is the engagement you're looking for. Are you looking for a team builder? Are you looking for just a straight up icebreaker game? Are you looking for ways to get quick feedback? That this or that is a great one, because you can say, hey, would you rather option A or B? And they go back and forth. It's a great way to do it. The more you get into Gimkit, they give you little avatars that you can customize and this and that, the whole thing. But it means that when you're doing those this and that's, they're running back and forth, they're seeing their choices real time, which is another big engagement for them. Strategy 4 is wait time, which is so important and so incredibly uncomfortable. So just a reminder that wait times are healthy. A lot of times we pose a question as a Scrum Master, and then we're met with silence, absolute silence. And it's just a reminder that it's okay to give them that awkward time. I also have some suggestions for if you have an overtalker. Some teams have a participant who's always willing to come in and save the rest of the group, right? You've posed a question, you've done your awkward wait time, and it's always the same person that's jumping in to answer and save the team. I'm gonna be honest, it is 100% me. I am that person. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me, right? What I like to do with those individuals is I'll set one-on-one meetings with them, and then I would really encourage you to wait until you have a relationship with this person first, but to set challenges for them. It's another form of gamification, but it makes it a personal approach to it. So for example, if Dan's the person that's always jumping in to save his team, I'm gonna say, okay, Dan, you got a 3 before me challenge this week. You have to wait for 3 people to talk before you can jump in and share. If Dan's an extrovert, that's gonna kill him. If Dan's like always rushing in to save the day, it's also gonna kill the team, because they're gonna be like, why isn't Dan talking? We need Dan to come in and jump. Like, what's happening? And it'll be perfect, because it really puts that awkward wait time. Everyone's on the spot. Or if the 3 before me, like if you're like, I'm not sure we can get 3 people to talk first, just set a time amount where we say, okay, Dan, you have to wait 2 minutes before you're allowed to jump in and save an answer. Dan's idea is going to keep. He's still going to have all those same thoughts in 2 minutes, but it's also going to start training their yes, love the background. It's also going to start putting a little fire on the rest of the team, where they realize, oh, we can't just wait for the same person to jump in. The same can be used with people who are a little more hesitant for sharing out loud. So if you have a quieter member on your team, those one-on-ones and setting challenges can be a great way to bring them into the room as well. So I like to start off with just a one-on-one conversation with that person and figure out, like, what's the root of what's going on here. There's a great book called Immunity to Change. It's what the link on that yellow sticky note is right at the bottom of this section. And it's about how you walk yourself or other people through that conversation around, like, okay, what are you experiencing that's keeping you from doing this before? With some people, it's, they felt inferior in the past. A lot of time for our devs, there's imposter syndrome happening, especially if they're a newer programmer or they're newer to the team. They're just not sure that they're ready to be on this level. They're not sure that their ideas are actually going to help. And starting to walk them through that and helping them realize that they're not alone. It's a long game changer, but it is really helpful, I think, in the end. And then I also offer challenges to my quieter students or participants. So we gave the example for Dan with our overtalker, but let's say that Dusty is feeling a little reticent to participate. What I might even do is say, okay, Dan, anytime, like maybe, or Dusty, maybe his biggest block to entering is that he doesn't know how to jump into an online conversation that's happening, right? Marissa and Dan, our big extroverts, are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Dusty's like, I am not sure how to jump into this conversation. So sometimes what I'll tell them to do is like, okay, when you're ready to talk, I want you to just hold up a sticky note on screen. Not like, hi, I have a sticky note, but like I was doing just now. Most people didn't even notice that I picked up my sticky notes as I was talking to you, and I had Dan and Marissa, I've pegged my extroverts here. But like he just holding it in their hand while they're talking. I know what that means. No one else knows what that means. And so I, as a Scrum Master, someone who's helping moderate my team's discussions, can be like, oh man, Dusty, what do you think about that? And it's a way for him to enter as well. Just little signs where it's him choosing to enter, but me helping facilitate that. And then as we kind of get into it, be like, okay, Dusty, you've done this enough times that they're getting used to hearing your voice. I want you to try and jump into a conversation at least once this week without using our sticky note strategy. And then you're giving that over to the participant. You're not holding the reins on it for their entire time on that team. It's just a transitional approach to help them get to a place where they're feeling comfortable entering conversations or overcoming whatever that barrier was for them in entering. Sometimes it's a language barrier thing, and it's a great way to start that conversation about like how do we approach this. We live in a really interconnected world, right? So my husband's a dev, and he's working with a team in India right now. Some of them speak better than my husband. Sometimes there's a language barrier and they have to kind of navigate it and figure it out together. It's an opportunity to have that conversation. So in the interest of awkward wait time, on anything we've discussed so far, do we have any questions, thoughts, ideas, or instances where you've seen this happen in your practice, or maybe you have other ideas to bring into the conversation here? Dan, jump on in.
Yeah, so I work with teams that are mostly India based. And one other thing that I would call out is that they oftentimes are afraid to sort of rock the boat. So getting participation is really tricky from a cultural standpoint of like, I don't want to be the first one to speak. And oftentimes like it's a sign of respect to hold back something. And so like in moments or workshops where I want them to be participating, trying not to like punch through that cultural barrier, but try to work within that and using tools like this or like asking them to share in groups and then kind of come back and share where it's like there's nowhere for you to hide, kind of help. But this has all been really fantastic. I unfortunately have to drop early, but thank you so much. I'll look
Thanks,
forward
Dan.
to the board.
We'll see you.
So, see ya.
I agree with Dan, like that group, having them like break out to work in a smaller groups and then come back and share usually is more successful for kind of a collective cultural reticence.
Yeah. Allison, you're making me think of that liberating structure 1, 2, 4 all, which is a great way for those silent folks to get their voice heard or their thought heard in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I like to use that quite a bit.
Yeah. It was actually one of the things that helped me realize that I wanted to be a Scrum Master was how similar the practices are between the two. So in the education world, we call the 1, 2, 4 all a think, pair, share. So you give them a prompt, you have them pair up, and then you have sharing. If this is something that you are interested in developing strategies or tools for, when we get to the menu board at the last bit, there's ways to facilitate the breakout rooms so that you can build on that strategy. Because you guys are hitting on it really well, is It helps break down those barriers. There's confirmation of your thoughts are on the right track. You get feedback before you present it to the group. It's a really powerful tool. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Liberating Structures, it's definitely a great one. And a lot of the stuff that we do here today is going to go hand in hand with a lot of those practices. Any other thoughts or ideas?
I in my organization, we have a leadership team that folks that have various accountabilities. We recently broke into an interaction amongst the POs, and I found that people were more willing to talk because we shared more of a common bond. And something interesting too, I didn't record the meeting. We just talked and I scribed. And so much was like forthcoming. People, it was like the floodgates were open, and people, so you got into the underbelly to find out why people are not speaking and hesitant, something of which didn't happen in the larger group meeting because of fear.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not fear, but there was a hesitancy to be the first or to rock the boat, or what is the perception of me after I speak. So that was very interesting to discover.
Oh, definitely. Creating safe spaces for teams to be vulnerable requires a lot of intentionality. It requires, like exactly like you were doing, is investigating why are we not speaking and how can I remove the barrier to that. Well played, Felicia. Well played.
Just another thought, working with cross-cultural teams as I have in the past, I recognize with community-oriented cultures, there's clearly a sense of hierarchy as to working with someone above and below and all that. And so the status within the community is very critical for them to understand. And so a lot of times it really does, you have to almost create relational equity, or I mean dynamics that are very powerful before you can actually get them to participate at a vulnerable level. So that's a very critical thing to remember when you're interacting with that culture.
Spot on. Spot on. This is awkward wait time. But having granted it, we are going to move on to the next activity. So I'm going to bring us over to strategy 5, which is intentional use of the chat. So a lot of times we post something in the chat and we're like, okay, just let me know in the chat what you think. And you'll get a variety of responses if you get responses, right? So sending specific prompts in the chat that are designed for engagement. And then actually speaking of the chat, before we move on, I'm going to jump in really quick and check for comments. Let's see. Someone had asked, is Gimkit free? Yes, Gimkit has a free version and it has a paid version. There's more access to games and things in the paid version, obviously. I think the paid version is like $10 a month. If it's something that you end up using, I have found my subscription to be very worthwhile. But there is a free version and it is pretty robust. And Dan, before he left, said he likes to watch them suffer and squirm, which feels very on point for what I have learned from Dan today. That is excellent. We're going to use a chat strategy today called Emoji because blank. When we pose these higher order thinking chat prompts, it lets them still engage with the material, but in a fun way, and draws the material information out of them because you're giving them a specific format you want them to use. So don't post yet. I'm going to give directions. Don't post yet. What you're going to end up doing is answering the question, what was your overall impression of Gimkit? And you're going to pick an emoji and explain. So The rule is you can't pick standard array, so no thumbs up, smiley face, heart, none of that. Here's an example: bed because it felt comfortable, or alien because it was strange. If you're not sure how to, this group is very tech savvy, but I'm going to post it anyways. If you're not sure how to get to emojis in Zoom chat, follow the arrow above step 5 and it'll walk you through how to do that. Go ahead and find an emoji and answer the question, what was your overall impression of Gimkit? So you're going to go emoji because blank. And then when you're ready, you can post. Well, Belinda, I'm gonna have you post it in the chat. So you're gonna do the alarm clock and then because, and then fill in the.
Yeah, I realized that after I did it. I gotta find the chat now. Where did the chat go? There it is. Okay.
Very good. I did like the alarm clock though. I haven't seen that one yet. All right. And then Allison, if you want to add the rest of your sentence to that one. So we've got juggling because they felt like their brain was bouncing around. The alarm clock because it was quick yet effective. The advantage to using this as a chat prompt is they have to explain their thinking. So they have to pick something outside the standard array, which means they actually have to think about what would answer the question. And then they have to be able to back up why they chose that emoji. So it sometimes will take a little longer than them just typing in yes or good or I didn't like, but now you're getting actual specific feedback.
Yeah. I like that you eliminated that standard array, because that seems to be people's go-to whenever you're asking, is everything okay? Do you have any questions? And everyone just says, good. Oh, good.
Yep. Yep. And now they actually have to do a little more of the critical thinking piece, right? They're coming up with an analogy, they're coming up with a metaphor. A lot of times I'll walk through these. Oh, Allison got hers in walk because she felt like she was too slow to know what she was doing as opposed to running. So actually that was about what I was about to say is a lot of times I will actually get feedback for myself as the Scrum Master where they'll say I needed more instructions, and I'm like, oh, next time I do this type of activity with them, I need to prep it differently, or I'll get feedback where I can start picking out patterns like, oh, they feel like we have too many stories in this sprint. They are feeling overwhelmed. They are feeling like they don't have enough resources. They are feeling like you guys can start picking out patterns. And then as the Scrum Master, that's where you start that next piece of the conversation. For those of you who are just joining in, I'm going to post the mural that we're using today. And I'm going to move us on to strategy 6, which is pre-thinking. I'm really big in pre-thinking. We're actually going to do a 2-for-1 here. So the first strategy is pre-thinking, and we're going to do our pre-thinking with a word cloud. Pre-thinking is anytime that you are asking them to start mulling over ideas before they start sharing out. This is really helpful for people that are neurodivergent, who are English is not their first language. This is also a really great one if you've had a team that seems a little flustered, because it helps hone them in on the conversation that you are about to have. You get multiple points of view. It can be anonymous, for better or for worse, so be careful with that one. And it's a really great way to get more voices in the room. So what I'm going to have you guys do is go to that website that's listed there. I'm going to post it in the chat for you. And we're going to do a word cloud. It might ask you to register. Just keep clicking skip for now. There's a way to set it up so that you can track information from your teammates and record that stuff or give them point. We're not worried about that right now. So essentially you should have a box and you're going to describe your team engagement in a single word.
I'm not going.
Engaged, sporadic.
Ah,
Now, here's what I like about this platform. Usually to do a word cloud, you need a pre-generated list, then you run it through, and then it generates the image. The problem with that is you're not getting real-time feedback from the team. If you're not familiar with how word clouds work, oh, it just went, yes, okay. With word clouds, the more a specific word is being used, the larger it got. So when we typed somewhat, two people put in encouraging, and it was the largest one. Then another word got added in, and now it's all balanced again. So if 3 people typed in quiet, quiet would be the biggest word on our word cloud. Now, if you were using this, for example, to check the temperature on your team, or if you were using this to be like, hey, what is our biggest blocker or impediment that our team is facing right now? And all of a sudden you're getting big text, that's something that each person of your team is putting it multiple times. So if you're hearing like QA is slow or something like that, like that is a place that you've got a bottleneck and you've now collected a quick snapshot on it and you're ready to go to the next piece. You might say like, how did the amount of stories we took on the sprint feel? And they might say, you know, one or the other, but now you're getting immediate feedback. And you can either, there's 2 ways that you can do it. You can have everyone post at once and then close it so that it's a snapshot of what they saw. Or you can let it run. And so like right now, you might be reading the words that are on the board and being like, oh, it is energizing. I'm going to type that one in too. So there's ways to eliminate groupthink. There's ways to allow groupthink. That comes back to that question. Are you asking them to engage or comply? If your idea is really to get the real feelings on the table, kind of like what Felicia was saying, is you got to lower some of those barriers for vulnerability. So if they're afraid to say it, but all of a sudden it's there and they're like, yeah, I do feel that now, I want to put it in too. Maybe groupthink is what you want. Maybe they need someone to step in first so that they can follow suit and embolden that way. Maybe it's something you don't want groupthink, you just want to collect a snapshot. That's how you start parsing out, what do I want the engagement to look like for this activity? Questions?
I like the idea, Cara, that you put out there of like, what's our biggest roadblock or something. It feels like it could be a good use in like a retrospective of folks if you're looking for a topic to talk about. Seems like it could be useful there.
I think the pitfall that we fall into with engagement strategies is we think that it has to be fun and it has to be about team building, but it's also just as viable for all of the information that we use with our teams. So for example, you could do it with even like a cumulative flow diagram, and you could say like, what pattern are you seeing here, right? And you might get a whole bunch of IDKs. You might get a whole bunch of I don't knows from your people, and then you're like, oh, this data is totally irrelevant to them. I need to provide more coaching on what this is and how we can use it to identify bottlenecks, right? So like engagement strategies aren't just for fluffy team building. It can also be for getting to the root of problems that your team is facing. I'm going to go ahead and bring us to strategy 7, which is timers. So strategies 7, 8, and 9 are really quick. I won't be spending a lot of time on them, but timers are a great way to help with time boxing, to help orient a conversation direction when it's going too long. I use timers all the time for myself. I gave a presentation last night on LinkedIn strategies with AI, and part of what we did is like, I want you to try this strategy. And then I set a timer for 4 minutes. It went off and then we regrouped so we could do the next piece of the conversation. So outside of just time boxing, it can be awkward to figure out like how much time do I need to give them to try a strategy. I always aim for a couple minutes shy of what I think I need to give them. And then when you regroup, you just do a quick, like, do you want more time, less time? Is it time to move on? So just as like an aside, Mural has embedded timers. They're up at the top. So Mural, I think, also has them if you are someone that uses those as platforms. And then when it chimes, everyone can hear it, which is great. YouTube has a whole bunch. So sometimes I'll just screen share a YouTube countdown timer while we're working on something. There's a whole bunch of lean coffee digital templates, which is something we'll explore at the end. And they all have timers, and you can also embed a timer in Zoom. There's a link there if that's something you're curious in or about learning more about. And then someone from a previous presentation dropped the yellow sticky note in with some really fun timers that you can use if your team would be receptive to it. Strategy 8 is strategic variety. So I'm throwing the book at you because it is the topic of the presentation. But in a normal setting with my teams, I would maybe pick 2 of these strategies to use. These are strategies you could pick and choose from. Teams thrive on structure, but a little variety can change things up. So I would encourage you to just pick 1 or 2 to try and ingrain on a regular basis and then swap them out. But you're not going to do all of them at once. You will overwhelm your teams. And then strategy 9 is visually posted directions. So especially with our international teams, we've talked a lot about them today. Having visually posted directions is great because statistically, what the research shows is that people's reading levels are higher than their audio processing levels for language acquisition. And so if you have everything posted, they're more likely to be able to spend their time reading it, especially if they can access it ahead of time and know what they want to share when it comes to that point. So it helps your teammates really prepare for that point. It's really great for people who are neurodivergent as well, because it lets them come in and out of the information as needed and still be an active participant. And it lets people know what they're accountable for. So they might have to step away and do something, but they come back and the directions are posted, they still know what they've got to get done. I don't know if you've noticed, but part of what that looks like in this presentation is like when we did the emoji chat, there was steps for how to add and search for different types of emoji icons. When we did the waiting room at the beginning, there were posted directions for how to put the images in. So not just the question itself being written out, but the directions for how to do the task were written out. That way too, especially with waiting room activities, you don't have to constantly repeat yourself. It's already posted. So as people are coming in, you just say, read the directions, everything's posted. Questions, comments, or ideas?
I've experienced the fact that a lot of times if you're trying to create the ordinary to be extraordinary. And so in many ways, it's helping the team realize that you don't always have to have the zing to be able to get to the point that you need to get to for the retro or for whatever other meeting. In other words, learn to just appreciate vulnerability and the development of relationships around what you're trying to accomplish as a team.
Definitely, definitely. I think we're used to making everything exceptional, where sometimes being intentional about what the result we actually want is can help us get there much faster. I'm going to bring us down to the second row, and we're going to talk about menu boards. So menu boards are a way of providing autonomy and choice. It's a great way to break up onboarding sessions, facilitate coaching exercises. If you have a large chunk of information, instead of just saying you have to do the entire list, saying you have to pick 5 of these 10, and you can pick which 5 you do, or saying, hey, I want you to start, you get to choose the order that you do these in. Some pieces of training are sequential and they have to be done in a certain order. But there are extra pieces of training, or for example, I've worked with companies where they have a bench, right? When you're in between different projects, you're on the bench. providing that extra bit of choice. Like, these are things you can choose from. These are all things that our company needs developed, but there's some options and choices here. What order you do it in, which ones you choose, which ones you're interested and engaged in. Sutherland talks a lot about his happiness metrics and his happiness index. And what he really comes down to is that autonomy, right? Being able to choose. So I've put together, I think there are 7. Yes, there are 7 different topics that we've either touched on or haven't touched on that might be of interest to you based on the topic of today. If you're not sure where to start and you're like, 7, I'm feeling overwhelmed, pick the one you've never heard. Like, here are some examples of how you can choose. Pick the one you've never heard of. Pick the one you've always heard about and always wanted to give your time to explore, but never actually got around to. Pick the one with the title that starts closest to the first letter of your name. What I'm going to have you do is kind of read through the tiles and then pick the ones that are the most interesting to you. So this is how it's set up. There's a strategy in the upper quadrant, so waiting room prompts. There's a summary, prompts for creating digital waiting room before meetings. And then there is a resource. If you can't tell, I have a slight mural addiction. I'll own it. I'll own it straight up. But it'll talk to you about how to how to lay out your like activity. So there's a whole bunch of different types of prompts that you can do that just move beyond, like, a favorite character movie. As you're reading through them, if you have ideas for how you could see using it, I'd love you to drop a sticky in that last quadrant and say, like, oh, I could see it being used this way. We have about 7 minutes left. So I'm going to set the timer for 4 minutes, and I just want you to kind of explore these, and then I'll collect you back at the end for our retro. Our strategies are waiting room prompts, Gimkit, lean coffee virtual templates, polling and word clouds, Canva, which is a graphic design tool, breakout room strategies, and chat prompts. If you're someone who is really interested in learning more about that think, pair, share, or the 1-2 for all, I would really encourage you to check out breakout room strategies, because there's resources in there for how to facilitate that in breakout rooms.
And as we're wrapping up this activity, I did drop in the chat. If anybody has an idea for a game for a future event, feel free to reach out to me, or you can utilize our Slack channel. And also today's session is being recorded, and we'll get a recap and all of that shared out on our Agile Games Twin Cities website. I put the link in the chat as well, and you can use that to find past events that we've done, or also join our mailing list, and you'll be known about new and future events as well. So you guys can check that out if you are interested.
So that's our 4-minute timer. I know I've got way more information than was possible to explore in 4 minutes. I'm going to show you something real quick, and then we're going to head into our super fast retro. So what I like to do on Mural or Miro boards is have these 3 icons. So what I would say at this point is, I want you to find me on the screen and hover over the icon that best identifies where you are. So let's say we had another 15 minutes. Would you be ready to move on? Would you want to slow down and talk about this, or would you need more time to look around? So there we go. Okay, so we've got like 1 in each category. And so it's a quick way to just see without having people do thumbs up, down, sideways, or, in the chat prompt. Once we're kind of all in the same place and they're all hovering on, I need more time, I'm like, okay, let's set the timer. Or if they're ready to move on, then I'm like, oh, perfect. It's time to move on. So with our last 2 minutes, the retro is fast and easy for this one. You're going to grab a blue circle and drag and drop onto the sliding scale of island strategies that I can use tomorrow with my team. And I'd love your feedback on what is something you want to try with your team, what is something you want to learn more about. All of the strategies that we talked about today, I also have linked right below the retro where it says engagement strategy summary sheet in a Google Doc. That does each strategy, the key points of how you could use it or why you might want to use it. There is a PDF version of the board itself there, and some of my contact information.
I just dropped, but thank you very much. This was very informative.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Allison.
Yep.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining.
Yep. Bye.
And this is very indicative of who I was in my teacher life as well. I teach up to the bell, but I'm finished on time. So with that, I hand the reins back over to Marissa. Thank you for hosting me. This was
Thank you.
a great
Thanks for
opportunity.
coming.
Good job.
It's a great.
Yeah, this was great, Cara. And then I'm gonna, Cara, I hope you like making friends, because I'm gonna say, everyone go check Cara out on LinkedIn. She shares lots of great posts and ideas and things like that. And I'm sure she would love to connect with you.
Yes, please.
So, thanks, Cara. We really appreciate it.